I'm Claire Parker.
I'm Ashley Hamilton.
And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club,
the podcast where we read other people's memoirs and then call ourselves the master of their words. And if you say no, they should be their own master of themselves, then you can go read their books. But if you like to hear our version, baby, buckle your seatbelts. Click it or ticket, my friends. We're going on a ride.
A roller coaster ride. Ashley, do you have any announcements you'd like to get out of the way up top?
Well, we've got merch out and bustling. The Ugliest Girl in the World attack. If that is how you're feeling, just know that you can put on a cozy sweatsuit and muscle through it. And we are doing a live digital show on December 17th.
For who? Who do the benefits go to? You two aren't just greedy little greedsters. Picking up money at Christmas, are you?
We are giving 100% of the proceeds to the Brooklyn Free Clinic.
Huge. And can you tell me what the Brooklyn Free Clinic does?
Yeah, they provide free medical care for people who need medical care.
For free.
For free. We will be having a great time. We'll be having a goss, having a chat. I found an Emily in Paris cocktail book, so we're going to mix up some Emily in Paris cocktails, decorate some holiday cookies. You guys can join us at home. Join in on the chat, decorate some cookies yourself, mix up some cocktails. We'll all have a real holly jolly time.
We'll be doing that thing where we talk and forget that people can hear us and hold us accountable.
Yeah.
So if there's anything you've been dying to know the lore on, I feel like this is your opportunity. I'm a drink and a sip type girl, one drink and one sip and I'm gone.
And we're goofing.
And we're spilling beans. The beans are on the table.
Yeah. Who spilled the beans? Every single time you can look our way. Anyway, do you have any announcements, Claire?
No.
Okay. But if you were to write a memoir, what would you title last week's chapter?
Crime and Punishment, baby.
Okay. Did you do crime or get punished?
I did the crime and now I'm doing the time. My crime is none other than wanting to be healthy and environmentally sound. I am trying very hard. If you follow on the Patreon, you might know that I've been trying to eat a little bit healthier. I've been trying to do a little bit less food waste. So I'm trying on the weekends, going to the farmer's market and preparing just a vegetable side dish, a salad, just something to get some greens or some nutrients into my meals, added on the side of my bagel or whatever. If you follow me, I'm really big on breakfast. Anyway, I've really been trying to step out of my comfort zone and push myself to cook and try new things.
Oh, I've heard about these recipes. It's not going well for her over there.
I'm eating the nastiest shit you ever fucking saw. I look down and I'm just close your eyes, Claire. It's almost done. I'm eating such disgusting nonsense. First of all,
I'm literally begging you not to tell them what's in it.
Okay, I'll just tell you some of the things that I've botched. Every vegetable I'm roasting is coming out soot. Okay, I am eating just pure carcinogens. There's a sweet potato at the bottom, but on my way there, I'm eating just onion pulverization. I'm eating the inside of a chimney and being this has got vitamin C in it. I'm licking coal and being this is really good for me. Okay, I tried to make an egg salad. I thought that was a smart little quick protein healthy snack to have on the go. Throw it on a piece of bread, have a quick little crostini, if you will. I was measuring with my heart and I have to tell you my heart is full of poison. I made some of the nastiest fucking egg salad and I can smell it if I think too hard. I walked back home afterwards and I was oh my God, the egg salad lives in the walls now. It is disgusting, but I made 8 eggs worth and they're farm eggs. I got them from a farmer's market. So I'm well, Claire, I considered running them under the faucet with a colander. I was maybe I just rinse them off and try again. I'm every day making myself eat one little bite just to power through. I tried to make tzatziki, which is kind of a no-brainer. I had done it before and it went well, and I got overzealous. And so I ended up making, I think, a quart. I made 4 cups worth of tzatziki by accident.
Why did you make that much tzatziki?
Well, what you don't think when you're putting well, first of all, I had Greek yogurt. I thought I'll use the rest of this Greek yogurt. And then it ended up being so much Greek yogurt. And then you forget that you're also adding in cucumber and lemon and other ingredients. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And Mac isn't even here this week. So I'm alone at home just trying to every meal I have has so much tzatziki in it. And I also, when I was making it, was this doesn't taste garlicky enough. So
Can I tell you guys she put it on pasta?
Okay.
I feel like you have to go to jail.
Okay. Beyond just putting on a pasta, there's so much garlic in it.
She offered to bring me some, and I actually took it as a threat. It was like one of the meaner things anyone's ever said to me.
I'll post a photo of it somewhere.
I wish you wouldn't. I've seen the photo.
I did tuna. I mixed the tuna up with the tzatziki to try to use it up. And then I used that thing as like a protein pasta. It was, for the first 5 bites, it was fine. Bite 6, 7, and 8. It actually reminded me of the book we're about to read. Like, I was just like, I can't do another bite. I can't. And then it was like, if I think about it, I'll be nauseous. I am just powering through some of the nastiest shit you ever saw in your life. But you know what? What I'm learning is portion control. And what I'm learning is always just check a recipe. There's no reason to dump an entire vat of mayonnaise and an entire vat of Dijon mustard into just a few eggs that you mashed.
Okay, that's actually a really good tip. Always check the recipe.
I don't know who I'm not Giada. I can't just like dump. I gotta like.
Can I say the thing is with Giada, she's not dumping. She's measuring with love.
Oh, I don't love. I'm like white knuckling.
I think if you made something that was edible, you'd love
this
it.
Kale salad. It's so weird because sometimes I'll make something and it's so good. And then I try to repeat it. And the way that it's so bad, like I just keep thinking any day now, I'll be like an adult who's capable of putting together a little dinner.
No, that's so true.
And it's not going to be tomorrow, I don't think. But before 2030, I think I'll be able to like braise broccoli.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. And Ashley.
Yeah.
If you were a celebrity and you were writing a memoir, what would you talk about?
I would talk about my return to self and whether or not it did anything. I recently, by recently, I mean yesterday, dyed my hair back to brown, my original color adjacent. Like it's not quite the original, but it's pretty close.
No, it's very close.
And it feels very interesting. Like I forgot my hair was even red. I like saw a video that I posted yesterday morning and I was like, oh my God, random that I had red hair for a year and a half. I liked it a lot. I wish that there was an easier way to just go back and forth.
Wigs.
Oh yeah, I forgot about wigs.
Okay, can I say?
What?
You know who would love a wig?
Bug.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Bug would be a big wig girl. For Halloween, I tried to find her a just bangs wig because I wanted her to be Bug with bangs.
For Halloween?
Yeah, there's no dogs, bangs, only wigs. You know, if you're an entrepreneur, that's an untapped market.
Yeah, if you have a means of production.
I've searched high and low, and let me tell you, I can guarantee no one else is doing clip-on bangs for dogs.
The funny thing is, I bet you're wrong.
I really am honest about the fact that it was not just one Google search. I tried many a term.
But we all know what they're doing with Google these days. It's only if you have the marketing money. So I'm sure there's some probably bootstrap dog bang company out there that just put all of their money into the quality bangs. They probably got like real human hair bangs and like they just
human hair on dogs.
And they just had no money left for the Google search for the SEO optimization. And now
if I got Bug human hair wigs. Anyway, the point is,
if you guys can hear it in our voices.
If you can hear it, my hair is a different color.
And I was going to say, and if you can hear it, I'm pushing off doing this book.
Yeah.
Should we get into the problem?
Yeah.
The problem is that we love and revere and admire Keke Palmer. I actually think I've gone on record before saying she's my favorite celebrity, her and Nicole Richie. I used to say I would love a Keke Palmer memoir. And you know what they say? Be careful what you wish for.
This is not a memoir.
It's not nothing.
If you listen to the Patreon, you know last week we saw her speak. We saw her and Michael Strahan in conversation, and she is the charismatic phenom that we believe her to be. It's just not in this book.
I guess it's just really hard to say what this book was for, what the motivation was, what the hope was, who edited it. Like I was telling Ashley right before we got on mic, I could feel the way that her assistant, like during lunch break or something, must be coming up to her trailer and going, okay, and today's prompt is when you did that song Assets. Do you have anything to say about that? And then she would just like rattle off a response and they'd type it verbatim and put it in the book. And it's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I felt very strongly. I wrote this a couple times in the book that this book feels like responses to an unpublished interview where like she also didn't publish the questions. Like each chapter is kind of responding to something like a prompt or like a story that she wishes people knew, or like a story that she wants to use to offset something, another narrative.
That's the problem, is this book exists in a world where she does not want to tell you about her personal life. She does not want you to know about her personal life. And so she's having to acknowledge it slow. I don't know. She's playing this game with you where she's like, well, I don't know what you know about me, but I wanted you to know nothing. So I'm going to address what I think I have to address in like the barest way possible, so that if you don't already know, we don't have to get into it.
Yeah. So even when she does reference something, she doesn't include any qualifiers. She'll say like, you know, that situation with like the father of my child. And you're just like, unfortunately, I do. But like, there'll be tons of these. Like, if you remember when I hosted Saturday Night Live, and I'm like, I actually had no idea you hosted Saturday Night Live.
It's a bummer. I would compare this book to like a worse Greenlights. It's weirdly enough a business book.
Yeah.
This book is very heavily like how she's going to help you succeed in business.
Okay, I do believe her to be an incredible businesswoman for the business of Keke Palmer.
Yes.
I don't think she knows that much about regular people's business. Like, she'll reference what you can gain and learn from corporate jobs, even if you feel that you should exist outside the bounds of corporate America. And I'm like, but what do you know about working at it? Like, you've been famous since you were 11.
I guess I also think that's just not what she projects. This book is like a step. She wants to become a mogul a la Kevin Hart, Tyler Perry. These are the people she's looking at and naming. But she hasn't really gotten there yet. So it's hard to hear her like speak from the pinnacle that I think she's still trying to reach. It reminds me, I said it's like if Joanna Gaines had written Lean In. It's very like spiritual, circular gobbledygook about standing in your power and knowing what you're worth. And I think it would be valuable. And you guys know, I have fallen prey to a self-help book or two. When Matthew McConaughey told me, turn the page on your life, I said, okay. And I quit my fucking job.
I mean, when Hillary Burton told us that we were water, we were like, that is absolutely fucking true.
But like these sentences, like to a sentence, don't make sense. And I would go back and reread chapters just trying to figure out what she's talking about.
Should I read that sentence as just an example to kick us off? Someone might say, well, the lack of knowledge creates the ignorance that leads us to not knowing what's best for us.
It's tough because I've seen her in interviews. I've been watching a lot of the press for this book. And when she's asked a specific question, I find her answers very powerful and very applicable.
And there are nuggets in this book that separated out would carry that same weight.
And in person, she has kind of like almost a pastor quality of like, she can go deep, she can go funny. She's taking you on the journey. You're like listening and nodding along and being like, yes, I've been there. I feel it. It just doesn't translate to the page. And I don't really know what she was trying to accomplish. Anyway, I guess there's nothing to do but to do it. And of course, if you don't believe us that this book is not great, allow me to let you know how it starts. It starts with an introduction. And then the second page is a dictionary.com definition of performance. The word performance. She adds 7 definitions. And then the third entrance to this book is an excerpt from a podcast with Amy Poehler that is not put in any context. It's Keke talking and then Amy talking. She has 3 sections and they all start with this formula. It goes dictionary.com definition, podcast clip excerpt. The weirdest thing about these podcast clips, aside from the fact that she just gives no context to the conversation, is that she does not edit for clarity, which is like journalistic practice. Where like you remove the likes, you remove the ums. When somebody says, I think, I was thinking, you clear that up. You don't write that in the book. She writes their words word for word. When you're listening to a podcast, that's how people talk, so you can pick up on it. To read verbatim how someone speaks is actually very convoluted and confusing.
So this book is divided into 3 sections: performance, power, and purpose. It doesn't really feel clear what those 3 sections have to do with anything. Oh, and also the end of each of the 3 sections. So they start with the dictionary, then the podcast clip, and then they end with a quiz about what that chapter was about.
Oh my God. At the end of this performance, question 1, what happens when an artist's purpose becomes overly identified with their performance? A, they lose sight of their true self. B, they gain more control of their message. C, they become more confident in their abilities. D, they disconnect from their audience.
I'll let you guys figure it out. I want to say another thing about this book is that it's hard to tell how much she had to do with it because it's written in a way where like, obviously she was the one saying these things. And I wonder if she was just talking and someone else was just putting it on paper and then no one edited for clarity or
narrative
or narrative. There's no narrative to this book, but it's so convoluted that I don't believe anyone who works in books like had that much to do with it. Because wouldn't they have smoothed it out a bit?
Don't you feel like what I'm saying feels accurate? That somebody would come in and be like, talk to us about what it means to you to be an independent artist. And then she would kind of just like voice note for a minute or two. And then they go, okay, that's chapter 8.
I agree, but I'm wondering, but like,
why wasn't there a second
it feels like
step?
her and her assistant, not her and an editor.
I agree.
And so then the other thing that I was going to say is that this book cover and then the photos inside. So every memoir has a chunk of photos inside, not every, but most. And they're all like photos from their whole life, and especially ones that reference things talked about in the book. So if someone talks about like their first big magazine cover, you'll see that magazine cover in the middle of the book. This book has a gray cover. Keke is dressed in black. She's holding herself as a marionette. And then inside of the book, it's photos from the same photo shoot. So it's like 7 photos of her on the same gray background, wearing the same makeup as in the cover with like lots of hats on.
Yeah, every photo is almost identical, except for they all have a differing amount of hats, which I understand to mean like I'm a woman who wears many hats, but I just don't know what the purpose was.
And she's an extremely photographed person. She's been famous since she was like 10.
Yeah.
And so why were there no other photos to include in this book? Why did they just do like one photo shoot for this book? And they said, we'll put a handful of those in, make one the cover, make one the back cover, and then throw some in the middle. It's a very odd, we've never seen this before.
Yeah, I wonder if we could look up what the turnaround time on this book was. I do think she's like the busiest lady.
But that's what I'm saying is the photos in the middle of the book don't require any time or effort. It's more effort to do a new photo shoot.
Yeah, ask your mom to collect like baby pictures.
Ask one person to do a Google search.
It could have been us.
I would have done the Google search. Anyway, so chapter 1, who is pulling your strings?
The truth is this, I never really wanted to be a performer, but I always wanted to make people feel something deeply. For me, the essence of the human experience lies in emotion, the capacity to feel, to connect, and to emphasize. In my mind, it's the only true reason we are here. Otherwise, we'd just be floating spirits untethered from the ideas of self, emotion, understanding, but I digress. What I'm saying is none of us know why we are here, and that's scary.
So this chapter dives a little bit into her childhood. Her parents were not very present, and she found out a little bit later in life that when she was younger, she was molested.
And she found that out because she was watching an episode of Law & Order, and she goes, oh my God, that's what happened to me. And so she had this feeling from a young age that her parents weren't very present because they were working really hard to support them. But the thing that always bonded the family was they would talk about movies they loved. They would talk about TV they loved. And then she had this experience with Law & Order where like watching something on TV helped her better understand herself. And she was like, wow, it's so powerful what can be done with art.
Yeah, so she was very drawn to the idea of being able to create and to help people learn and discuss and like kind of go deeper in their own lives through art.
Yeah, so it's funny. This whole chapter is like naming movies and songs that taught her a lot. There was a movie called The Tale that really helped her see that when she was dating a man in his 20s when she was 15, like that's actually pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
She never brings up being molested as a kid again. She never brings up dating an older man in her teens again. She never brings up any of this.
It all is like very short sentences in long paragraphs that start and end in very different places.
Whether I'm writing or sharing my own story or performing something like a romance, comedy, or tragedy, I have compassion for the characters I embody and the real people who've lived those extraordinary lives. At the end of the day, we are all living our own unique lives and we're all trying to make it and get through our circumstances. I just think there's so much beauty in the understanding of how life is always continuing at this steady pace where we're all the authors of our own stories.
Our minds do this interesting thing where even as we grow, our ideas of certain things will stay the same unless we look back and force our current perspective to observe the past in hindsight.
She talks about how her mom loved Judy Garland and Wizard of Oz, and that was like a huge inspiration to her.
Yeah. Building on this inspiration, my mother's guidance taught me to embrace my own versatility and creativity.
And then she says, on the path of discovering my uniqueness, I also discovered the importance of self-validation. My first professional performance was on the set of Barbershop 2, and she tells the story about how on her very first day, her mom comes to pick her up and goes, how'd it go? And she goes, good. And she says, well, what were the director's feedback? What were his notes? And Keke goes, no notes. And her mom goes, oh, that must mean you did really well. He had no feedback. He didn't want you to change anything. The next day, there's tons of notes. And she, as an 11-year-old, just a baby, has kind of like a little breakdown. And she runs off set crying. And then she's so embarrassed she was crying.
She has a panic attack.
And she realizes when she tells her mom what happened, her mom goes, oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that no notes was good because, you know, that's just how it works. Everyone's going to have a different opinion.
And she realizes like the power of words and the way someone else's perception can affect your perception. I learned to separate my performance from my personal emotions. I'm not my work, but I do my work.
This marked the beginning of my process with detaching myself from my own feelings, which came with a loss of innocence as I learned to be a professional around many adults. By doing so, I gained the ability to focus on the craft, navigate feedback with clarity, and grow as an artist. But then she talks about the triple bind of being a child actor, wanting to be the perfect child, the perfect student, the perfect coworker. She says in addition to like wanting to impress everybody and then also support her family, she also has the weight of being Black and the weight of a Black child in the public eye with no room for error or childhood mistakes because everybody's counting on you. I felt like I was losing myself in the process of always trying to make everyone proud. Like I was being forced to grow up too quickly without the chance to experience the carefree joy of childhood. And even though my life is unique to me, I have a feeling that many of you reading this who either share the same background or have a completely different background still know to some degree what it's like to grow up too fast. As I continue to perform, this time it's not through the lens of who people want me to be, but who I'm deciding to be. At the end of the day, aren't we all putting on a performance? The gag is who's pulling your strings.
So she kind of wrestles a bit with rewriting this narrative. She takes child stardom and turns it into an opportunity. She had the opportunity to support her family after they sacrificed so much for her. And she realizes that because she grew up very fast in the public eye, like she has to be a lot more intentional about making sure that she's the one writing her own narrative.
I think you really nailed it when you said she's answering questions that never get asked.
Yeah.
The more I think about this book, what it seems to really be about, she keeps saying, you get to write your own narrative, you get to tell your own story. And I do think there's a lot of power in that and saying like, she goes, don't let anyone disempower you by telling you what your story is. You tell it to yourself, be the victor, not the victim of your story. And so a lot of this book is about, I wasn't forced to support my whole family at 12. I was lucky enough to support my family and like break generational curses. And like, how lucky am I that I had a community who sacrificed so much for me? So what I gave back is finances. And that's not them using me. That's like us all coming together as a community. And I'm the one who makes the money and they're the one who like made the sacrifice. Like, unfortunately, because we're like starting there with her, you're kind of like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah. You're very happy you were a child star. It sounds good.
And then she also doesn't really give that many specifics of anything except to be like, age 12 to 17 was really hard. And you're like, oh.
She never gets into her dad, but there's a couple little asides about her mom here and there. Like, yeah, I was like pushed away from them. Or like, I don't know. It's very bizarre.
It's hard to grasp because it's not ever really talked about. It's like mentioned.
There's no journey. We don't go on a journey with her. She's telling us where she's at right now.
I'm not even saying she has to tell us this journey, but to drop it in this way is deeply confusing and like undigestible.
Undigestible, and you don't believe her, really?
Yeah.
This whole book is about where she's at now and how she's so happy and everything's so great and she's so successful and this is what she wanted the whole time. And you're like, oh, okay.
It's so hard that she did this book because in person, you're hanging on to every word out of her mouth. Like in person, she is magnetic. And so everything she says, I'm like, everything you say is true and I believe you and you're my cult leader. But like in this book, it falls apart. Every sentence is crumblier and crumblier.
So then she's talking about how much she loves Josephine Baker and Eartha Kitt and like finding your purpose. And she says it's crucial to separate your purpose from your right to be. Meaning you deserve to exist and be yourself regardless of how or when you fulfill your purpose.
This is such an interesting thing. I starred that because I think that that is like a really intelligent nugget. But within this chapter, it like does almost nothing.
Yeah. So then she moves on to like discipline. And she's like, when I first got into the industry, I had limited professional stage experience. And now I'm on Broadway. When I first started Broadway, I was so nervous I couldn't do the changes on time. But I just worked really hard at it. And I learned that discipline trumps talent. The whole experience of her Broadway debut was a testament to the power of discipline.
And then she talks about like the amount of pressure, like at every turn. So she was the first Black Cinderella on Broadway. And critics are notoriously hard on people of color. They've been awful. And so there was a lot of pressure on her opening night. And then she talks about like not believing the critics and just like finding your own light within yourself.
It's dangerous to have outside voices in the space where you're the most creative version of yourself. And I'll admit that it's a really tough but necessary skill to have.
There's no wrong or right in creating. Creating is creating and vision is consistent.
And then somehow she gets into like the boundaries of the industry. And she says to have reminders of your relationship while you're mindlessly scrolling down your own For You page is low-key triggering. And while a trip down memory lane can be nostalgic and fun, no one truly knows what's on the other side of a photographed image. So she's like, I never wanted to date coworkers because I don't ever want like my relationship to take priority over the work. But I have to say, like, in the grand scheme of this chapter, I'm like, what are we talking about?
Okay, you know how we've read books where they kind of obviously go through and control F every proper noun and change it to like this person because they don't want you to know exactly who you're talking about, even if it's obvious. In this book, I feel like she went through and control F'd for every proper noun and then deleted the sentence.
Yeah.
There is no tangible reference to anything.
Similar to how I handled myself years earlier on the set of Barbershop 2, I dusted myself off and tried again. There will always be setbacks. I think that's the funniest thing. When we learn lessons, we think that means that nothing like that will ever happen again, that we experienced it once and we'll never have to do it again. I don't think life is like that. I think it's actually about experiencing many different versions of the same triggers, and it's your bounce back rate that shows proficiency.
See, I loved that. And I feel like that as a like nugget to take outside of this book is so crucial.
So like the concept is, what do you do with your purpose?
Yeah.
And then do you let your purpose define you?
And it's important to note that this is not in the purpose section of the book. We're still in the performance section of the book.
And I do think that's a really interesting question. I watched her talk it out with Michael Strahan in a way that I was like, oh yeah, some people have a purpose and that's so lucky. Like not everybody really knows what they want to do. Not everybody has a reason why. And if you are lucky enough to have one, that is such a huge boon to giving yourself meaning and joy every day and like a reason to wake up and stuff. It's so hard just to exist. But then once you find it, does that mean that everything you do have to be purposeful? Because that's like a tall order.
Yeah.
And if your purpose is larger than just your family or your friends or yourself day to day, it can become exhausting to be trying to serve this higher purpose all the time. So like, how do you find balance?
And when do you go to the museum and look at a porpoise?
Exactly. And I think that that's an interesting concept. And then somehow we're talking about like why she doesn't date on set. And I'm like, how did we get here?
How did we get here?
So then she has chapter 3, the freedom to say no.
So she discusses a lot in this book, the Keke Palmer brand and the amount of work she's done around brand building and kind of taking the threads that started with child acting and True Jackson BP and turning it into this like corporation almost. And how saying no is a huge part of that. Like some people will say like, say yes to everything as you're growing. And she's learned that you have to know when to say no.
And again, this is a chapter that starts off with something pretty interesting, but then the thread of it gets lost. So she starts out with saying that her family, it was really important to them that I didn't get like too big for my britches, which was tough because they were relying on her financially. She has 2 sisters and a brother and 2 parents. They deeply feared people were using my success as a way to disempower them. So I developed this sense of imposter syndrome where I could no longer amount my success to who I was, and any acknowledgement of the beauty of who I am was apparently only because I was successful, as opposed to the reality that I am successful because I am this person. And I get what she's trying to say here, but you kind of have to parse it out. I think what she's saying is her parents were basically like, be careful, they're just trying to use you to get close to your success. And so there's this idea that your success and who you really are these separate entities, and anybody who likes that you're successful doesn't really like you. But, you know, they're not 2 entities. So anybody who likes you, you then are saying, well, they don't really like me. They like my success. But now here she is on the other end of it going, actually, I'm successful because of who I am. And like, that is a big part of me. I can't imagine what it is to know Keke Palmer, but she seems driven, ambitious, professional, like intense. She seems like someone that shows up prepared, ready to go, ready to hustle. And I do think you have to like that about her because that is who she is.
And so a lot of her success on social media came from putting those 2 pieces back together and saying like, I am a person who likes performing. Like she had to refine love of performing and say like, my success and myself are not separate. And so she can like be herself in a performance. And that's how she developed such a social media following.
But then also it came because she had no offers.
Yes.
So then this is also a lot about getting on social media because after she aged out of True Jackson VP, people were like, well, this is what we think comes next for you. And she didn't agree. So she like invested in herself. She said she had gone to the School of Disney and learned how to do like a content shoot day. And she said, I'm going to get online, bring all of my talents, and then like reestablish myself online. And she gives herself a lot of credit. And I give her a lot of credit. She's like, back in the day, people were really not interested in having a celebrity go on social media. That felt like a step down. But she took that step so that she could rebuild her audience and like control the narrative and like re-showcase her talents to move back up. And it was very successful.
Yeah, so she was having a lot of trouble auditioning and she just didn't even like it anymore. And I think we've read this in a lot of memoirs from actors that they lose the love of auditioning. And if you don't like auditioning, you can't have a successful audition. And so she decided to just take it outside of the auditioning room and build her social media presence to bring something else with her into the room. She says, I wasn't going to be able to change the system, but I could change the way I operated in it.
And then she tells the story about being on, what was that show, Scream Queens? with Ryan Murphy and how he was like an asshole about scheduling. And basically had promised her a certain amount of days off and then would last minute change, be like, no, we need you on set. And she said, but I was building this secondary career on social and I put a lot of personal money and investment into using those off days to continue to build my brand. And so when he told me he needed me on set and I was going to lose money, I had to tell him, no, you're asking me to do this because it's good for your business. And I'm saying no, because it's good for my business. And even if we never work together again, I have to let you know that I'm a serious person who has to be respected.
She does say, like, yes, it was professional of me to leave set when I was scheduled, but it's unprofessional of you to be changing the schedule every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that is true.
I would have lost money and pieces of my integrity had I not left the set. I'm not sure that Ryan cared or got it. And that's okay because he was just centering his business, which isn't a problem to me. But what I do know is even if he didn't care and even if I never work with him again, he knows that I too see myself as a business, not just someone in need of employment, but someone who knows their value respectfully. Bottom line, I bet on myself every day and I've never looked back. I know I'm a good collaborator, but I'm also a fair collaborator. So good for her. I mean, listen, I do think she is a woman who is like very fair to herself, which is a very difficult thing to do in Hollywood.
She seems extremely true to her word.
Yeah, I think she is just somebody who's shown up and goes, I've earned the right to like prioritize myself. I know I'm giving you 100%. So if you're asking for more than that, I know that you're asking for too much.
True Jackson.
And I really respect that. You know what she says in this book that I thought was funny and interesting is she goes, True Jackson VP was the character most like me because she was like a hustler and I'm a hustler.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if that's why that show resonated and was so successful.
I loved it. And I think that I was way too old for it and like extremely aware of that. And I remember watching it and being like, I just love this show. I think I remember babysitting and being like, do you guys want to watch True Jackson VP? And then being like, no. And me being like, well, we will.
So she's talking about the importance of being selfish. And that's not like in a negative way, but in the way where you have to prioritize yourself. And here's like the sentences where I'm like, okay, I've read this 4 or 5 times now and I think I get it. There's this idea that certain women are expected to perform certain roles in society, that being passive or deferential to men is a way forward. For clarity, I disagree. I disagree with the idea that as women, it's weak to be passive or that there is no space for respect for the opposite sex. And I disagree with this notion that as women, there is no scenario or situation where it is constructive or okay to not be.
So she's trying to define feminism and she's really saying feminism isn't misandry.
Yeah, it's not about being a man hater. It's about being powerful in yourself. But like the way she says that is confusing. Right?
Oh, the way she says it is confusing.
It's interesting to be like, for clarity, I think it's fine to be passive. It's fine to be passive and deferential to a man. There's times where that's absolutely fine.
Like the culture that her family accepts.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I think she's trying to say that she is very proud of herself for being like a powerful businesswoman, but she doesn't want to insult anyone in her life who isn't.
To me, the way I read it is like, you can be a powerful businesswoman and you can be like a God-fearing wife.
Yeah.
I think she's saying like, there's roles when it's okay to be like, ask your man. And then there's roles where it's okay to like.
I think she's trying to say it all.
Yeah. There's a lot of double negatives in here.
And then she says that she thought the Barbie movie was really good.
Thank you.
True currency is time and how you spend it. As long as you're still standing, your time is never up.
You are the truest asset in any space you walk in, and what you have to offer is your essence. And trust me, we both know you have a lot to offer.
Okay, so this is the part where I started to get really muddled, and I know it sounded muddled already. Maximizing your time plays an important part when working with corporations, and sometimes looking at them as trade school can be more useful than looking at them as a job or career. So this I don't think is like the worst advice if I thought she knew what she was talking about at all.
Well, she says this thing, she goes, everybody's priceless. So to me, the concept of going into a job or any career thinking that somebody's going to pay you your worth, I don't know if that's possible.
So she goes in being like, what you want when you are at a job that you don't find fulfilling is to learn and treat it like trade school. And I do think that that can be like a good mental tool for someone who hates their job to be like, okay, what can I get more involved in to like learn to start my own thing later? But then she like goes on and on about how like no corporation could ever be a fulfilling experience and you have to just like learn and then become an entrepreneur. And I'm like, wait, I don't think that's true. Because I also think going back to the thing I liked in the earlier chapter, where you don't have to spend every second of every day being like driven towards your purpose. You could just be like, you can just have a job.
But then she goes on to say that like, she doesn't want to be an entertainer forever, but her purpose is creating community. As my understanding of myself evolved, so did my goals. I knew I wanted to create something that would allow me to be a conduit for others, to be able to transfer the skills I learned throughout my years of entertainment and business experience and build a platform for others to use as a launchpad in their pursuit of entrepreneurship.
So this is her app.
So she has an app called Key TV, and I think that that's why this book exists, to get people on there. She really does look up to like Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And he had an app, and I guess it's doing well. Otherwise, she wouldn't be looking up to him. Once I understood that, I'm like, oh, she is trying to like manifest herself as a business mogul. I think right now we know her as like an incredibly talented host and performer. So because the public conception of her doesn't match that yet, it feels weird to watch her be like, this is how I succeeded, when I'm like, I think you're still on your way.
Especially because reading this, I'm like, I don't look up to you as a business person. No offense. Like, I think you've done an incredible job with your business. But I think I look up to her as a host and performer. I know. When I look at her and I say, what of Keke Palmer do I want to learn from? I think she should be Jimmy Fallon. I've said it like 10 times since seeing her the other day. In my bones, I want to start a change.org position to change the show to the Keke Palmer Tonight Show. Like, she would be perfect.
Oh, 100%.
She would be the most perfect late night host in the whole world.
No, she's great. She can chat with anybody. She's hilarious. She's professional. She can sing. She can act. She can do sketches. She can do, I hate to say it, pranks. But like, do you know what I mean? She's conversational. She's hammy. She could do the monologues. She could do anything. But she goes, here I am, a living testament, almost 23 years into cultivating my own brain and saying, I did it and you can too. And I think that right there is the problem in this book, that as you said, even though we both like have a lot of respect for her, I don't think I look at her and think business.
Yeah. I believe she has a good business.
Yeah.
Because of her success as a host and a performer.
But I think there's like 3 versions of Keke Palmer. There's Keke the performer, Keke the businesswoman, and then Keke's personal life. And this book is about her as a business person.
That's the least interesting of the 3.
Yeah. Then she talks about you're going to have to be disciplined and accountable.
Yeah.
The 3rd step is awareness.
She says there are several times when I know I've gotten in my own way because I've allowed fear or overthinking or hypothetical nonsensical scenarios to plague my mind. We're humans. We internalize the wrong things too much at times. It doesn't serve you to constantly say, if I had gone to private school, if I'd grown up in this area, if I'd grown up vegan. And so she's saying you can't focus on the what ifs. You have to just like focus on what is and what you can develop today. And I just think that that's a funny companion piece to Alec Baldwin's entire life.
It's important you experience and do stuff that excites you and that offers you the opportunity without relying on the outcome. It's equally important, in my opinion, that sometimes you don't have the opportunity because that informs your experience too. Without that flexibility and thought, I think a lot of people can be stopped from being happy or being really appreciative.
One thing that I think is an interesting sentence is she says that had she gotten something she auditioned for when she was like 9,
American Juniors, which was like an American Idol baby edition,
she would have been tied up in a contract for years. So she wouldn't have gotten to sign with Atlantic Records. She wouldn't have done a Disney Channel pilot. She wouldn't have done The Wool Cap, which was her first movie. 3 opportunities and important factors in the foundation of my brand. I think it's so interesting that she calls those 3 early projects her brand and not her career.
She's really into the brand.
Yeah. Support for this show comes from Amazon Prime. Get the most out of your holiday season with Amazon Prime. It is Friendsgiving season. It is holiday party season. There is baking to be done. And let me tell you what, we are not professional bakers. So here we are, head to toe, covered in flour, dozens of ramekins short, unable to finish the dish. Thankfully, Amazon Prime has fast delivery of everything you need to bake your heart out this season.
You know what actually we desperately need in my house?
What?
Aprons.
Oh my God. Are you going to get one?
Yeah.
With a funny little design on it?
Yes.
Oh my God. That'll be really exciting.
We're hosting Thanksgiving this year and it's in literally 5 days. So I have to Amazon Prime it tonight. I have to get from Amazon Prime, I'm getting an apron. I need to get a meat thermometer and I need to get a cheese grater.
Oh my God.
Like one of those things where you turn the handle and it grates cheese semi-manually, but less manually than if you were holding the cheese.
Okay, that's really hard. I recently had to get more baking pans because it turns out I had one.
Ugh.
And it was old and bad. And I don't know what kind of flavors that was adding to my cookies, but I think nothing good.
And can I tell you, I've been telling myself, Claire, just get the apron, get the cheese grater, get the apron, get the cheese grater. Do you know what? I'm probably going to order it.
And the night before you need it, but thankfully with Amazon Prime, you can get it rapido.
I love that.
Do you know what else I'm going to try to make this year? A pie.
For the dogs?
Yeah, but I still need a pie tin. And they're going to be honest with me if they like it or don't. It's not just fast, free delivery on everything you need for your holiday party cooking needs. It's also holiday movies on Amazon Prime Video and holiday music on Amazon Music. This is the year to set the cheer with Amazon.
Whatever you're into this holiday season, from shopping to streaming, it's on Prime.
Visit amazon.com/prime to get more out of whatever you're into. So then she gets into her personal life.
I'm going to get a little personal, just a little. And I guess as two people who did think that this was going to be a memoir, to watch her say that explicitly, like, fine, I'll give you a little bit of insight into my personal life, but only because she's essentially been forced to because of the gossip blogs and like what has come out about her relationship.
Can I say one other thing though? Had she given us like a true look at her career and growing up in the spotlight and like not even really gone that much into her personal life?
The way Kerry Washington was like, here's an aspect. I'm telling you a part of my story.
This book is nothing about nothing. It could have been something about something. She could have left out her personal life and still given us a lot. She's been famous for over 20 years.
She could have like given us her life and not her romantic life.
Yes.
So she says, my personal and professional lives will always remain two separate things. And this to me was one of the hardest things to communicate to people who love me. But it's also not hard to engage on the public with that. She kind of addresses what happened with her son's father, Darius. It's inappropriate when people feel they have access to your private relationships. I'm here for entertainment and I have no problem with that. I'm very clear on what our relationship is in that regard, her relationship to the public. On every level, I'm there as something to be presented. And that doesn't mean I'm not being authentic, but it does mean that I must always have my personal boundary with myself or of what my expectations are of you and what my expectations are of me and what I should give to you. These are the boundaries I've worked to establish myself. Okay, so what happened is basically she went to an Usher concert and I think she got pulled out of the audience essentially to dance with him. You know, Usher's a romancer. Lord knows he would romance me. And her boyfriend at the time, Darius, kind of like freaked out about it on Twitter and obviously caused this huge online conversation of like, who is he to be telling his girlfriend what she can and can't do? Like, is the way he's acting appropriate right now? I'm sure there were people on his side being like, how dare she do this to him, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, then it seems like things got worse. At one point, she filed a restraining order against him and alleged domestic and emotional abuse. And he like countersued and said it was actually all her fault. And then I believe a video was released. And listen, I don't think Keke Palmer in any way wants my sympathy or my pity. So I will not give it to her because she is a private woman who has had many successes and she is not somebody who wants her mess in public. And unfortunately, it got dragged out.
Yeah.
And I think this is her like frustratingly having to acknowledge it head on. And boy, is head on
not the right word.
She says nothing.
She says the plot is a young, beautiful Black girl from the south suburbs of Chicago who uprooted her life and her family, who created a brand and created a business, who spent years becoming a generational talent. That is the plot. It's not, I've got problems with my baby daddy. Now let's move on. And, you know, that is her prerogative.
Yeah. But also that is why this book doesn't feel that good, interesting because it's not a good business book.
No.
I don't know. She basically goes, you don't know anything about me. You know me as an entertainer and I don't owe you anything. Which does make it difficult to then watch her be.
And I'm like, well, then tell me the story of you as an entertainer.
Yeah, we don't get much of anything. And then, of course, we get the Master of Me self-assessment exercise.
I'll give you guys an open-ended question. What would it look like for you to embrace your unique journey and let go of comparisons or competition with others?
I don't want to talk about it. I don't really want to let go of my competitions with others that have nothing fueling me. What else would be holding me back? The key takeaways were embrace authenticity, perfection is a burden, self-awareness is power. The thing is, when I watched her talk about this in real life, it was so compelling and so motivational. And to read it and like have it be so weird is difficult. Part 2, power. Again, we have a dictionary.com definition.
We have a 5-page podcast excerpt
of her and Tyler Perry, which actually does sound very interesting. I'm very interested in Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is somebody who's always raising the quotes of women he works with.
Yeah.
He really is like trying to raise the people up with him. And so for that, I'll always give him credit and respect him.
I mean, he's come through for so many of our memoirs.
Tiffany Haddish.
Prince Harry.
Pillars of the Black community.
So she says she was never afraid of being extremely powerful and she's always known she is. But other people were trying to dampen it.
Can I say, I can't even imagine what it was like to meet a 12-year-old Keke Palmer. I like absolutely believe she was just born for this life.
Oh, yeah.
The Tyler Perry story is about that. She asks him, like, who gave you permission to build the empire you've built? When you were growing up, like, how did you just, he goes, I don't know, I just knew. Like, why wouldn't I own this? Why wouldn't I make it? Why wouldn't it be me? It's really incredible to like come up against people who have that inner drive. And Keke obviously has it.
Yeah.
And I believe it's always been like, of course it'll be me. Of course we're going to go to LA. Of course I'm going to make it. Of course I'm going to support the family. I'm 10 years old. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah. And then she talks about competition and how people are going to feel competitive energy with you when all you're doing is existing. Like when you are someone who exudes strength and power, people feel extremely threatened by it because everyone else is sitting there saying, why you, not me, instead of course, me.
This could have been such an interesting book because when I watch her now, when she says like, who are you to tell me that I was this like exploited child star? I'm somebody who like lifted my family up with me. We are a community. I've created generational wealth now. Who are you to tell me that that's not a victory? And I'm like, that's such an interesting perspective, especially for me and Ashley, two people who are very like down on child stardom. And I'm happy for, like, I do think like sitting around feeling sad that you were exploited probably isn't better for her on a day-to-day basis. It's probably better to wake up every day and go, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. Don't take it from me. I worked really hard. I've done great things. I wish we had gotten the journey of like, okay, well, tell me about when you were 18 and you were mad at your mom because you said, I can't believe I had to support the whole family. Like, we needed to have watched you get there.
Yes. It feels like she's responding to headlines.
Yeah.
And she talks about how when someone is the first and like creates a role, like creates something, Halle Bailey becoming the first Black woman to be cast in a Disney live action movie, when you have all of these firsts, the backlash sometimes is so loud that it will just undercut the accomplishments instead of it being a celebration of someone being somewhere first. Instead, it's a response to criticism that this person has done something that's never been done before. She also compares it to, she was the first Black woman to win an Emmy for Outstanding Game Show Host.
And she says like, don't make us feel bad and guilty like it should have been someone before us. Like, yeah, I can't believe it took this long to get here, but like how great that someone finally did it.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm very interested in that experience. I can't believe she's being made to feel guilty.
Yeah.
And like, I could just be dead wrong and like completely off base and out of line saying this. But like in my mind, when people say like, can you believe it's taken this long to have like the first XYZ nomination, X whatever, I don't feel like they're like yelling at the star.
But I think other people are.
Yeah.
There is other backlash about it always. I don't think the headline saying the first XYZ is like the problem, but I think it contributes to it. What I'm saying is, I don't know if we're going to change anything by not showing up for those who've initially pushed through those doors. Let's cheer for them instead of being annoyed and saying, wow. Now, I'm saying we shouldn't discuss it every now and then, but at what vantage point are we discussing it from? And what is the sentiment louder than the sound of your claps for the trailblazer? I'll be honest, I don't know about you, but I can't cry about it anymore. I've done that and I've harbored resentment for weeks at a time, but I have no more tears left.
She then talks about this big Twitter drama that compared Zendaya and Keke Palmer and blamed colorism for why Keke is much less successful and Zendaya is so much more successful. And she was like, do you know how fucked up it is to log on and watch everybody call you not successful?
Keke Palmer is extremely successful.
I got people telling me my career isn't as good as someone else's because of the complexion of my skin. No, babe, I won't let you project that onto me because it's actually a lie. I'm actually extraordinarily successful, getting everything I want to get, and I'm not dead yet. Like, damn, y'all killed me. My career ain't even over. How can I be underrated at 30? I just got put in the big girl oven, like, let me cook.
She also talks about when someone is very successful and then everyone says, oh, it's the Illuminati. She's like, why can't people just be successful? She goes, everybody's not in the Illuminati. And what it means is that you don't believe that anyone can be successful for real.
She also says you can't listen to everybody's opinion because taste is personal and like being good and entertaining is quite subjective. So please understand this on your continued ride to greatness. And remember, anytime someone tries to use another person as a comparative marker for where you're at or where you're supposed to be, cut their asses loose.
She starts talking about corporations again.
She says corporations are gonna corporate.
People assume that everyone in the industry is stacked with cash, but you got to understand, to make money, you must spend money. And she says you have to understand how to make corporations work for you instead of against. I don't really understand.
Invest in yourself. She's like, by the way, just because I'm making $100, I'm probably spending $50 to, I don't know.
She says you have to understand what you want and then spend money to make that happen. Be like water.
This is Chris. She goes, there's a real pushback on hustle culture because our country isn't the same anymore. Blame corporatism. It's simply not the same anymore. Everybody's got headquarters now. Even the bank's got a headquarters, and it's the damn federal bank. So this idea that we're going to beat the system, and I hate to say it, I hope I don't sound ridiculous, is futile. Rather than try to beat the system, we should focus on mastering ourselves. As systems continually evolve, self-mastery allows us to remain adaptable and fluid, turning upheaval into opportunity. It's about knowing what you like, what you're good at, and using the leverage against the system that works for you. I think this amounts to like stay on TikTok. A lot of her advice boils back down to you got to get on social media and have your own audience.
And like diversify. She says getting into hosting was really helpful for her and it was kind of a gamble.
But also it was a gamble she had to take because that was like the only job she was offered.
But it also is something she wanted to do. She wasn't doing it just for money. She's also passionate about it. A big part of mastering yourself is not being so delulu and thinking that there's going to be some big offer that's going to come if you just hold on tight. Sometimes holding on tight means nothing good gets in. That means if she's holding on to just like being a serious actor, then her hosting doesn't come in. There's a lot of flexibility that you got to have in this business called show.
She says, what will move the needle is you knowing what your value is, knowing what your personal power is and leveraging those things so that you can get what you want. Or so you can decide not to be a part of the things you don't want to be.
She also talks in this chapter about how sometimes you look around at other people and you just have no idea what they're doing, what they're thinking. Like she always thought her parents were so sure. And then she was talking to her mom and her mom said, you know, I was so scared when you got your first movie, but I was looking at you and you looked so confident. So I thought, well, if she can do it and she's 10, then I can be here with her. And you just never know what anyone's going through. So you just have to be sure of yourself and do what you can do.
So here I am telling you all the ways to consider looking at your glass half full, making sure you all know you can empower yourselves with a bit of perspective and sharing some of these harsh truths that can propel you forward, both professionally and personally. Don't drag me through the mud now. So then she talks about the power of parenthood. Before having a kid, I was having such a hard time saying no to people. Having my son made me feel like, bitch, you better figure it the fuck out because he needs you the most. It made me love myself more than ever so that I could be great for him. The shift has made me extraordinarily powerful because now I'm just pouring into myself more than ever before. I'm understanding how to continuously build my self-worth because I know that he's watching me now.
So this chapter gets a little complicated because she's talking about her own parents and her relationship to them as her career was growing. She's trying really hard to walk this line of not saying that she knows best, but she is saying she has an incredible intuition and she always has.
And she said now that she's a parent, she has more room to forgive her parents and she understands where they're coming from. But she also like appreciates that her parents were willing to apologize. It's really awesome that my parents created a safe space for us to heal. I'll be honest. I do think that because of what I learned, because of what they exposed me to with therapy and all that type of stuff, I became the difficult younger millennial pushing them to see the error of their ways. Or I'd show them the mess I'd have to clean up in my life because of them, rawr. The typical young adult journey where you realize you have to grow up and stop being mad at your parents because they didn't raise you perfectly. While that's necessary for a young adult to accept, it's equally important that a parent can take a little justified Yelp review. I'm grateful that my parents were open to hearing my perspective.
My parents have always kept me grounded because my family was never materialistic. I've always been aware that my greatest resources are the people around me and the love and relationships that I have in my life. It's just hard because there's no examples of anything.
And then she goes to be cash rich, to be asset rich, to be relationship rich. Ask yourself, which one has the greater value? If you ask me, I love an asset or two, and I love having cash in my account. But if I'm relationship rich, then I'm rich in resources. So she talks about being raised Catholic and having this idea that you need to like infinitely forgive everybody. And it wasn't until having her son that she realized actually there's one person on earth you need to love unconditionally and everybody else, it's not your job to forgive them constantly. Only God can forgive constantly and you're not God. So like give them a fair shot, but then put it up to God.
Yeah. I think she like hits on really important issues like the line between holding people accountable and forgiveness and things like that.
It doesn't mean you can't be of service. That doesn't mean you can't love and help out. But if your self-worth is built on saving others, you're setting yourself up for failure, taking on a job only his love can handle.
You can't fix people's problems, so stop trying to fix shit. A job like that is too supreme for another human being to manage. And then she talks about how, you know, when people have it out for you, all they have is your fear. So as long as you move forth with confidence and purpose, nobody has anything on you.
Love should have conditions because there is already an unconditional force that loves us all. We aren't here to do that. We are here to experience being human, and that includes happiness and pain, because in that pain, we turn inwards where the truest love will always be.
She also has this interesting line about survivor's guilt. She says, it's not just someone living and someone not living. You can have survivor's guilt in trauma and some people who become blocked by trauma and some people who are able to heal and move past it. And like you feel when you've moved past it that you have to reach back and help everybody. And you can't always.
So then she tells a story about a time she was like at a party with a rapper who I guess she kept trying to film her and she said, don't film me. And then he did put the movie up. And it really was like, she was like, don't do it. And then she's like, okay, I'm just going to leave. And then he came and was like, no, I promise I won't. And then he did it anyway. And then when she called him out, she got a lot of backlash.
It was Trey Songz. I looked it up.
Interesting. And do you know what the video, like what happened?
It was a music video that he was like kind of filming rogue, I guess.
Like Project X style?
Yeah, like he was filming it at a party and she didn't want to be in the music video. So she like went and hid in a closet. And then he got a clip of her anyway. She was like, please don't use it. And he was like, I'm not going to use it. And then he did use it. And everyone is like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would he do that? But
why wouldn't he do that? Of course
he would do that. And he made a statement being like, I don't care enough about Keke Palmer to like trick her into being in my music video. And it's like, well, obviously you do because you did.
So then she got backlash. She said, for me, it wasn't about him. I don't hate that man. Honestly, I'd still listen to one or two of his hits. He doesn't own the masters anyway. It was truly about the principle and the growing respect and esteem I had for myself. It was about me making sure everyone knew I was coming into my own as a whistleblowing ass bitch. I love that. It was a warning. If you do something improper to me, I will put your ass on notice. I made my decision that I didn't want to be fucked with ever again. And maybe I didn't do what I felt I should in the moment because I was scared, but I grew enough from that moment to know that I would be better to myself the second time around.
I mean, she is funny in this book. And she has these great little lines. I just like wish the rest of the book was built around them better. She gets into her relationship again and breaking up with her son's father, which I'm not sure if they're still broken up.
She basically just says like, I don't know how it got to where it got. I guess there were red flags, but I thought we were going to grow together. It got out of hand, so I walked away. I don't regret the journey we took to get there because I learned some important lessons and my son is the best parts of both of us. And boy, is that a perfect combination.
We ruin beautiful people by not holding them accountable.
The fallout of our relationship, especially through the court system, was the hardest thing I ever had to go through, but I knew no other way to bring order to the situation for both of us because it has truly gotten above me. I didn't want people to hate him or think he was crazy and judge his entire character on the worst aspects that I experienced. But mostly I didn't want my son to think his father was a monster because I don't. And if I am a trigger for someone else, the best thing I can do is remove myself before all was destroyed. I ended the cycle the best way I knew how. My hope is that as my son builds his own self-worth, he can begin by watching us think enough of ourselves to be better. And then she has like a quick intermission where she talks about the difference between an LLC and corporation. Oh my God. But actually she's not. She's talking about a song she did called Assets.
It's very confusing.
It makes no sense.
Then she goes into this one little piece that went viral. She tells the story from the set of Scream Queens where supposedly Lea Michele was pretty racist to her. People online are accusing Lea Michele just because she was racist on the set of Glee as well.
And also because Keke Palmer still follows everybody else from that show on Instagram.
But does she follow Abigail Breslin? Because I also saw that it could have been her.
Oh, interesting. Anyway, whoever it was, Keke was trying to like calm down a stressful situation. And somebody said, literally just don't. Who do you think you are? Martin fucking Luther King. And she basically says, what I did to keep my power is like to not care. As a woman, I can't just let everything a misogynist says bother me. It's so important not to get caught up in other people's drama because sometimes that's all they want you to do. That was their shit, not my shit. And not even stepping in and helping out, I would still not let it become my shit.
And then she talks about how darkness is what helps you grow into the person that you get to become and like not letting the bad times drag you down, but instead letting them lift you up. Thriving is not just surviving a traumatic event, but living in the new you that was created through that experience with pride. You have the ability to become the greatest version of yourself, even if it means losing whatever or whoever in the process and becoming anew. Great times are great because you have bad times, but the feeling of getting on the other side is only transferred through a shared human experience.
I like to ask myself, why did this happen for me? What am I supposed to learn? And I encourage you to ask yourself the same questions because there is a reason why I'm facing certain challenges. There is a reason why this thing is happening. And even if this is some tired tale that humans tell themselves while they go through this existential crisis of existence, I'm still going to say there is a reason, even if it's all for nothing, because at that point, I might as well make it fun for myself and create the reason and just treat it like a lesson as if I'm at school. Like if I have to be here, I might as well learn something from this discomfort. Otherwise, I'm actively making sure it's pointless. This whole book can be summed up basically like, it's your story. There is no honest answer at the end of this.
Yeah.
So you might as well just like tell yourself whatever story you have to get up.
And that is also a story. She talks about how rampant misogynoir runs in the industry and especially in dating. She talks about people saying, how could I hate Black women when I date them? And she goes, oh, that's a lot. You can very easily do that. And lots of people do because they're insecure and awful.
Then she has a whole chapter of affirmations for herself.
I like this one. Don't carry other people's guilt and shame. Leave that to those who were involved, who had their own lessons to learn. Oh, and I like this one too. Self-doubt enters. Sometimes I feel guilty for not being happy. I know I'm blessed and I can see how God has continued to bless me through each phase of my life. I feel like I've constantly grown and constantly been supported and things could be so much worse, but they are better than most. It pains me and disappoints me when I allow myself to not focus on that truth. Self-doubt exits.
Then there's the Master of Me self-assessment exercise.
Here's a discussion question. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had to prove yourself to others? What was driving that need and how did you handle it?
Another dictionary definition, another clip of a podcast.
And this section is about purpose. Purpose is the passion that keeps you going. I have this intense desire to focus on creating more space for goodness while I'm here. And of course, now that I have my son, who I popped out of my butt and I love so much, my life is so much more purposeful with him in it.
That whole chapter is 1 page.
Yeah, but I'm happy that she has purpose. And like, she's funny. She's funnier talking than she is writing.
So then she has a chapter called Leo, where she decides to announce her pregnancy on SNL. And basically it's just about being like, don't tell me I look pregnant on Twitter. Let me tell you. It's like not your business. And she talks about Hailey Bailey's experience.
Okay, so this chapter is one that I think annoyed me the most because it is a fairly start to end story about hosting SNL and the decision to announce her pregnancy on SNL. But it's written as a response to like a non-question in a way that is like glaring. It's told in this bizarre after the fact response-y way when it is just a complete story that could have been rewritten into a very contained piece.
I feel like the question she's answering is like, well, why would you put your pregnancy on SNL? And I'm like, who asked?
Who said that?
It made a lot of sense to me. The timing worked out perfect. How fun. What a fun way to announce pregnancy. And then she's really upset about what people did to Halle.
Yeah. She says some people aren't hiding something. They're just not ready to talk about it yet.
As is fair.
As is fair.
And then she talks about meeting Jordan Peele. They first met on Key and Peele, and she just learned so much from him. She says it's the first time she ever got to improv and have fun in comedy. And then she even DM'd him after watching Get Out and was like, I would love to work with you. And then he called her and made her a star of the movie.
Nope. Can I say one other thing she says about her son that I really liked? When she's trying to get back to normal after giving birth, and then she realizes I'll forever be postpartum because I'm forever changed. My mind is not working the same anymore. So how do I come to terms with that? And I don't mean that in like a setbacky kind of way. I mean it in a movie forward kind of way. I think a lot of people are always obsessed with like bouncing back and like being the same. And it's just like you literally created a life and now you move forward like with a part of you external. That's different. Anyway, so she works with Jordan Peele. She does Nope. It's a great experience. She also starts hosting the second hour of the Today Show for a little while and realizes she's extremely powerful as a host.
That's where she met the love of my life, Michael Strahan.
And when she's hosting, like it really heightens her awareness and kind of elevates her understanding of her control over her career. So it heightens her focus, her intentionality. When I realized I could be an asset, my perspective shifted.
So then she talks about like going viral a lot and how great social media is to like introduce her to different generations and how she likes that some people know her from Nope. Some people know her from True Jackson VP. Some people know her from I'm Sorry to This Man.
She talks a little bit about stan culture and how like when you're in these iconic projects, someone's memories are tied to you. So they like really create this parasocial relationship.
It's interesting that throughout this book, she uses a lot of other artworks to describe her own feelings. So she's like quoting the TV show Swarm to explain her feelings. Like a lot of times she'll be like, the way I feel about this is a lot like this movie or a lot like this song lyrics or a lot like this TV show. Like she really does love TV and film.
Yeah.
She says, honestly, I was never afraid of getting older. Maybe it's because I've been a parentified child for so long. I simply couldn't see how it could get any worse. Ha. See, like you can't say something like that and then never tell us anything. Like, you know what I mean? And then be like, actually, I've looked back though and I had a great childhood and I'm so happy.
I mean, there's so many little sentences in this book.
It seems like she went through a massive period where she like stopped speaking to them and like was only with her team and then maybe left her team and went, I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like she was really resentful of the fact that her family was trying to hold her back.
Yeah. It's like so much of what made me the Keke Palmer you see today is because of what I've done and experienced in my youth and in young adolescence. There's actually a part of me that's relieved that certain aspects and memories of my past are way behind me.
As much as I still want to keep learning, I know that there are times when I can still be a bit self-sacrificial, faltering to old habits. It happens.
It's so funny because then again, it kind of all sums up for her to being like, listen, I'm going to get on TikTok and maybe I won't be doing the dances Gen Z's doing, but I'm going to be there.
Yeah. And then her saying like, and I'm growing from who I was, but that doesn't mean every now and then I won't make the same mistakes. And, you know, even though hard times happen, you can decide to push forward and rewrite your story and you can be your own champion. That's what it means to be the master of you.
She said it's really important to be honest with yourself and others. You have to just say when you don't understand something. That's communication 101, period.
There was a point in my life when my family encouraged me to reject my fame and power because they were afraid it was going to usurp them. Like, what? You have to talk about this. I had to abandon my childhood feelings and desires and become a parentalized child with a lot of weight on my shoulders, which is something I've talked about, and I'm sure some of you can probably relate to in your own way.
This is something that I've had to continuously work through because while I am grateful, I often feel like I miss the it factor of life. Like, that's such an intense thing to say, to then be like, anyway, the story I'm telling myself is I'm so grateful.
I feel like I'm missing out.
Laugh. But she says at the end of the day, the most important thing on earth is family. I have no other purpose without family. We ask no questions. We just show up. We're like the mafia. And then she says, you have to forgive people.
And then she talks about how she has ended friendships because she thought people were using her and they weren't. And she like writes this kind of vague letter of apology to someone. And then she encourages you to write letters to people that you've fallen out with.
That entire section that we just described is less than a page.
Yeah.
Like, to say she writes a letter, it's like a paragraph kind of.
First of all, I did not know about this project Big Boss, which I will be watching for the Patreon. She created her own album and directorial debut. I think she made her own J-Lo music movie. And then she says that she spent $300,000 of her own money to produce it, but then she sold it to Amazon for an undisclosed amount.
She said it was just worth it to be independent, even though it's harder because she felt very traumatized by her early experience with the music industry where they made her do things she didn't want to do, like songs she didn't like.
It's just so frustrating that
Again,
she's saying,
this entire section is one page.
But she spent $300,000 and then made question mark amount, and she goes, and I made some money. It's so weird. Just don't say any numbers then.
And then the next chapter, it's called It's All About Patience. And she's like, I have ADD and I get things quickly, so I have a hard time being patient. But now that I have a son, I've learned you got to be patient. And then she talks about the Met Gala and how amazing it was to get to go.
And how she loved working with a smaller designer and like thinking that the two of them would always be in this partnership because he's the first designer who really believed in her as like a fashion girly.
And then suddenly she's just like, anyway, the next year, Marc Jacobs called me. How amazing.
She goes, it was bittersweet because Sergio just couldn't afford it. The decision was quite financial, but Sergio gave her his blessing. And then it turns out going to the Met Gala is fun for her, and she's able to talk to designers and learn about their process and what the night means for them. And then after doing the Met Gala and winning a Webby Award a few days later, she realizes her imposter syndrome is gone. And to that, I say, is that your imposter syndrome gone, or have you just like gotten enough things? I feel like your imposter syndrome being cured has to happen out of thin air because imposter syndrome isn't real.
Yeah. You can't be like, well, now that I've won the award.
Yeah, you can't be like, oh, the award cured my imposter syndrome. Like, that's not what imposter syndrome is. You have to cure your imposter syndrome because it's not real.
And then she talks about activism. She goes, I've always believed that it is my duty to use my platform wisely.
Unless I decide I don't want to.
And she says there's a couple kinds of activism. Social media activism, which is dumb. And then real activism. And then performative, which is also dumb.
And she goes, overall, there's like not much any of us can do on an individual level.
So as much as I love and believe in activism, I feel like the greatest form of it is being authentic and caring about what you care about and focusing on the things that ring most true to you. That's what I do. I can't do everything. And even the things I do, I know them to be enough. They're honest and true. And for me, that's all that matters.
Okay.
And then she actually, the rest of this chapter about activism is about, and that's why I started my podcast. She's like, how great is that?
Yeah.
And she's like, my mom is on my podcast, and that's really cool, bridging the gap with her, like the age gap, the generational gap.
Yeah, she loves to be curious and ask questions and not be afraid to learn. And then this next chapter is an advertisement for her app, which is called Key TV.
She says, I'm sharing with you the key to culture and the key to being an entrepreneur, which is like upload your content onto my app where you can get discovered and get paid. And then she talks about her mom, kind of barely.
Yeah.
She's like, a lot of people think it's negative to be called a momager, but I love my mom now.
And she like has put her mom in her content.
And she goes, people love that she's like part of the extended Keke universe. And then she goes, name a better duo than Sharon and Keke. I'll wait. And I go, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for you to say like anything about your mom.
And then she goes into her experience in the music industry and how the music industry is fucked up. Even her mom got caught in the web, allowing the music industry to treat her like shit. I learned how to step away from the situation that I thought I had to tolerate for validity in this game and to do things independently. So that's why she started making music independently.
Like, shouldn't this chapter have come before the Big Boss chapter?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, didn't I just read this exactly? Didn't I just read the story about your mom like believing people over you just because you were 14 and they were like industry experts and being wrong?
I've always wanted to be a hit artist and not just have a hit record or a hit album, but record labels need you to have hits because that's the only way they make money.
I guess I like don't 100% understand why those two things are at odds.
No, me either. My most recent musical venture on Key TV has been the addition of my girl. So now she's in a girl group. Entertaining is truly my transmutable medium. It's how I alchemize. It means so much to me to be able to share that transmission from what I've found difficult in this world to something beautiful and relieving. Okay. So through entertainment, she is able to transmute pain into entertainment.
Valid. And then she has like 4 pages about getting to be at the BET Awards with Usher and how fun that was.
Yeah.
There's a lesson here, I promise. There's something important about destiny and about speaking things into existence by living in action of what you're trying to do. About doing the work even when no one is watching or giving you your own flowers. Even though I couldn't have imagined something like this was on the horizon for me about a year ago, whether that was showing up with my diva girl group on the blue carpet or honoring Usher in this way, to see my love of music and performance forming this bridge together as someone who'd been slept on by the music industry in my youth is something I'll never forget.
And then she goes on to say, you have to have your own North Star. You can't let anything else guide you. If you want to have a path that you're excited by, you have to create it for yourself.
She says, I'd be the same person if I was driving Uber or even if I wasn't famous. Then she goes, my sister has a memoir that just came out called Keep Living. And that's so true. And this chapter is called Keep Living. And I'm like, what do you mean your sister has a memoir?
And then we go on to really get to the crux of this book. She really dives into the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none.
Then it turns out that it actually goes, but sometimes that better than master of one. And she's like, but nobody even said that. I don't know. She like does the history of that phrase and then comes back to the original point of like, what matters is being the master of you.
Yeah. And sometimes being a master of yourself means being a jack of all trades.
Mastering me means you get to write your own story. A lot of times I don't think our experiences and how we were raised allow us to believe that. My parents did what they did, uprooting our lives and chasing dreams to show us that we had a choice. No matter how it all turned out on the most basic level, they wanted us to know we had options and ways to see the world. I want people to understand that the power is not in what is happening, but how we choose to see it. I learned how to find joy where there was sadness. I learned that I'm in control and that who I present to the world and how I'm perceived are based on the way I've mastered me. And then there's a quiz. I guess this book is her telling herself that she's really good with her family.
Yeah.
I don't know. Dude, I almost feel like if it seems like it wasn't that bad, it's because we did a good job, but it was hard. I'd be interested. I'd be interested in other people's opinions. I think with all books, if you're in a certain headspace, it just hits you. Maybe you don't need her to be specific anything because you're going through experiences that match up perfectly and she completely resonates and you're like, this is what I needed to hear.
And there are like nuggets in there that I think are so powerful.
Yeah, I would love to hear from actually other Black women if they liked it. I do think there's a lot in there about like what she's experienced, like the misogynoir she's experienced and how she's overcome it and like the mindset she's taken on. But I mean, some of it was just very bizarre. And unfortunately, I suspect that starting with the dictionary definition and then having a quiz is emblematic of a not great book.
How fertile would you consider this soil?
1.52.
I would even give it a 1.
And how many drinks would you like to have with Keke Palmer?
5.
Can I say, I'm going to say none because I respect her boundaries and I think like she desperately does not want me to know her or her to know me.
Okay, that's fair.
I think what I got from this book is she really wants you to know like the person you see on TV is not who I am. You don't know me. And I want to say respect. If I happen to run into you through a mutual, maybe we'd get along, maybe not, but I'm not going to pretend to know you in any way. I have nothing but respect and admiration for the performer you are. And at one point in here, she says, I have a gift for bringing people together. And I was like, you absolutely do.
Yeah. I mean, she was amazing in person.
She was amazing. Hard boundary. I'm going to see it. I'm going to respect it.
Yeah. But do you know who
don't respect?
You know whose boundaries I don't respect?
Because we're going to bear hug you with martinis.
I'm going to give you a smooch on the cheek, and I don't even like smooching. Our 5-star reviewing wormies. Thank you to Haley K6382926. If that's your phone number, I'm calling it tonight. Thank you, Jill Poll. If I could take a poll of the people in this room, how many of us fucking adore you? It's all. Thank you, Nat Clark. If I say, oh, I don't even like you, Nat, that's not true. Thanks, R7667. You've got the cutest little R's in town. Thank you, Lil Libertine, for liberating all of us from the dregs of wherever we were before. Thank you, ABBVH, for having almost the exact same initials as me, except for the BBV. And that is all for this week. I love you guys so much.